okay, how do I play against these international Masters players? It is not an easy jump to make, but you know this team has the options to do it.
That's the thing, we've seen the Rinyasun team being piloted so well and having multiple modes of flexibility. But the key thing here, I think, is the way Thomas has a slightly more unique team, you know, having that Shninja in there with the Zacian Kyogre combination, but pivoting in that Landorus switch out for the Kartana, it may not be something that people have necessarily prepared for or anticipated. And I think the adjustment has really, really paid off. I mean, I just felt so sorry for the Gastrodon in Hinata's side, because you could see exactly what he was trying to do there. Trying to make sure the Gastrodon could be disruptive, going for the Yawns, and then still had good offensive capability with the Ice Beam and something like the Landorus or Thunderous. That would have done good damage. But Eerie Impulse had something to say about it. And I'm a bit like, you know, Gastrodon, that's not the way I loved you in this format, okay? This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. But I have to credit the way Thomas was able to shut it down and just take complete control of that match.
Usually it's the Gastrodon putting a pin on your opponent, being able to lock them out with Yawns, forcing them to switch. But the combination of Taunt, Eerie Impulse, and then, of course, a Max Overgrowth really dealt with it in a very comfortable way. So digging into this team, what do you think Hinata has to go for? Is it the Charizard? Is it a Grimmsnarl? I just think you've got to leave that Gastrodon at home, because Thomas has shown he can dispatch it so easily. I
mean, the Charizard's a difficult choice, because you've already touched how Landorus can be such a great counter to it, but then, hey, you've also got Kyogre and also Thunderous. If it has, we've seen it a little bit more supportive, but if it is still running an electric type move, that's something Charizard's still not going to be able to appreciate. So I think it's a really dangerous option to bring. I mean, I agree with having, you know, Pokemon like the Groudon and the Incineroar and things, but maybe the Grimmsnarl, again, we don't know what the set is on it, and it has such a plethora of move options that it can have. If it has the disruptive capabilities to shut down Thomas' strategy the same way that Thomas was able to shut down the Gastrodon, then that could swing the momentum in Hinata's favor.
Grimmsnarl feels a lot better here. Being able to maybe not get knocked out so easily with the Reflect and Light Screen would be a massive option. And with a team like Thomas, which is very fast, very offensive, we've seen, of course, that Kyogre, you know, come out, put down big damage. There's some speed control in the form of the Thunderous, being able to Thunder Wave stuff, and that Landorus putting down big damage with its max moves. Being able to take those a little bit better, I think, would be very important. Of course, this team does rely quite heavily on, you know, two special attackers too, in the Incarnate Form Landorus and the Kyogre. So a Light Screen could go a long way here.
Well, the leads are coming out in this second match of the set. It's going to be the Zacian and the Gastrodon for Hinata, and for Thomas' side, it's going to be the Thunderous and Incineroar.
Right back to where we started, and honestly, this Gastrodon has to make a change. Isn't going to be able to sit there and just try and yawn. It knows about the taunt, but we do get a cool mind game, right? We do get players thinking a little bit further about it, thinking, well, is he going to taunt me again? Could I get a cheeky yawn that nobody's expecting? Just because he's going to have to make a different play because he expects me to change it up. There's a lot going into this run back of turn number one, and I really, really like it. I think it's a smart play from Thomas. He was able to lock out the game and makes a lot of sense. But Hinata's the one who, the onus is on him to make the changes.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is the lead that can be so integral to him to allow that pivoting. We can see already the Incineroar going for that fake out straight into Gastrodon. I mean, that's one way to stop it going for any tricks. As the Thunder Wave comes out from the Thunderous, so that is going to connect into the Zacian, slow it down, and give it the risk of paralysis. Play Rough, however, is going to come out. It's breaking through that straight away, and it does do a significant chunk to that Thunderous, and I like the way Hinata is targeting down into this really disruptive Thunderous. We can see the item on there as well, Citrus Berry, so going to get a little bit of regain. But that Play Rough actually hit really hard for being at neutral.
Yeah, just the Intimidate going down to get rid of the Intrepid Sword wasn't really enough to stop this Thunderous getting hurt really badly, and that is something that he is going to have to focus on. I do like the adaptation there from Hinata, but it's a good kind of read from Thomas, right? In the last game, he saw that Zacian switch in for the Groudon, and maybe he thought I revealed the Groudon a bit early, it got caught out by the Kyogre, so keeping in that Zacian was then read into by Thomas, landing a nice Thunder Wave on there, and one of the fastest things on Hinata's team is now going to be very much slowed down, so Thomas isn't going to have to worry about potential speed control from his side of the field, is just going to be able to kind of set up and go for it on many, many turns, but Gastrodon actually getting to play the game a little bit more this time.
Yeah, it's throwing a little Protect out there, and it's going to avoid this taunt, and again, Thomas just being in such a commanding position, shutting things down. The Incineroar's going to go straight for a Flare Blitz, however, down into this opposing Zacian, having the speed advantage thanks to the paralysis, and it does so much damage. Play Rough comes out again, though it's able to break through for a second time and pick up the KO, and this is a key moment for Hinata, getting rid of that disruptive Pokemon, and critically, the Gastrodon has not been hit by a Taunt or an Eerie Impulse, so that was a great Protect from Gastrodon.
That's massive. Being able to stick around and potentially yawn for the next few turns is going to change up this game plan significantly. It also changes up Thomas' switching options that were so vital in game number one, being able to switch into that Thunderous was absolutely huge, and of course, force the Groudon to be respectful and not just throw out Max Quakes or later on a potential Precipice Blades as well. But the Landorus comes back to the field. That is going to be the focal point right now. Does it want to try and deal with the Gastrodon? It probably should. I mean, the Incineroar's outspeeding the Zacian. That could just land a Flare Blitz there. And of course, you know about the Max Overgrowth now. Then you can just target that into the Gastrodon. With that in mind, you've just got to be respectful of those potential moves. And do you have a good switch? Gastrodon's just protected, so what's in the back? What could take that Max Overgrowth? And I think, honestly, Tomar's going to be forced to make a bit of a read here. There's no way Hinata lets that Max Overgrowth go down, is probably the line of thinking. He could be cheeky and try and you know, get it through. But if he's switching out, what's coming in? Can you capitalize on that?
Yeah, no switch is happening though, but there is going to be a Dynamax coming out on Tomar's side, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this be that Landorus once again. There we go, and that Max Overgrowth is applying so much pressure to little Gastrodon, unless it's going to try and push for something like a double protect, but even then, you're still stuck the next turn. And that's a difficult situation for Hinata to manage here. We're going to be seeing that Max Overgrowth, and it's not going to be trying to double protect, connecting straight down into that Gastrodon, and is going to be able to pick up the one-hit KO against it. So yes, Gastrodon hung on a little longer in this game too, but unfortunately wasn't able to go for a Yawn or an Ice Beam, and it's just been knocked out straight away.
Honestly, a little bit shocked to see the Gastrodon left to do that. Of course, the Max Overgrowth also threatens the Groudon quite significantly there, so that causes problems, right? You need something like the Incineroar to come in and try and help out there, but not able to do that is absolutely huge. Of course, the Landorus, for its troubles, does get caught by a Behemoth Blade, but the Flare Blitz now is going to take out the Zacian. It's going to be down to the last two. That's really big if you're the Groudon player, because yes, you're stuck, and as soon as that Kyogre turns up, guess what? Then it's going to be able, of course, to set up that rain and just tear through, especially for the Groudon now as well. It doesn't have Gastrodon to switch in and take those attacks. So this is looking very, very dicey for Hinata Kozuka. And Tomar has played another fantastic game. I'm just not sure about leaving in something like that Gastrodon when you knew about the Max Overgrowth.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like you mentioned, Groudon doesn't want to take one of those either, and it's a hard switch in, but hey, there's a Charizard. That potentially could have taken something like the Max Overgrowth, but it looks like Hinata wanted to establish this endgame state, setting up the Sun and having the Charizard, and of course, Hinata still has the option to go for the Dynamax here, so it could be an option to be able to get the, you know, G-Max Wildfire up on the field, starting to get a little bit of residual damage, but as you've already pointed out, Tomar still has the capabilities to switch Pokemon in and out.
That's going to be really big, and making sure the endgame position is set perfectly is how Tomar closes out this game. There is something that we have to consider a little bit when it comes down to these last two that we see from Hinata. The speed was looking really, really good for Tomar when he obviously paralyzed the Zacian, was then able to kind of sweep through for a little bit and got a lot of room out of that, but this Charizard mixes things up quite a lot. Bringing that in, saying, you know what, I can set up big, powerful max airstreams, get my Pokemon faster than you, means that kind of traditional endgame where you just bring in Kyogre and win is certainly a little bit harder. So I think, you know, Tomar may have to try and keep up with those max airstreams, but he is going to be in a little tougher position to do it, right? This Landorus has taken a lot of damage from that Behemoth Blade the last turn, and therefore could quite easily get knocked out by something like this Charizard while it's capitalizing on solar power.
Well, there's the max airstream you talked about. It's going to connect down onto the opposing Incineroar and get the KO against it, so forcing a 2v2 Pokemon endgame in this game too. And of course, getting the speed up on Hinata's side of the field as well. And as you've mentioned, Adam, it's going to be critical for the Landorus to be trying to match these as well. Otherwise, Hinata's going to be in such a strong position. Throw it out with the Rock Tomb as well. That's another way to gain some speed control. Going to be reducing the speed of that opposing Landorus. So even if there's a max airstream, it's still slower, but it's going to be the max Rockfall. This is something Charizard never wants to face. It's a one-hit KO.
That's an easy way to deal with the Charizard. Why play the speed game if you can just knock it out? That is a critical hit.
Wow.
That is able to just easily knock that out. No training, no Dynamax, no nothing. It is going to save you from a critical hit max Rockfall, and that's disastrous for Hinata Kozuka. Was relying on that, and honestly, the way that turn was going was so nice, forcing Tomar to be worried about speed with the Rock Tomb, with the max airstream, but the Landorus just turns around and says, you know what, I don't care, Charizard. I am going to knock you out. I'm just going to deal with you so fast. And yeah, you've got a speed boost on your Groudon, but guess what? It's going to struggle when it's in the rain against a Kyogre at full health.
Yeah, you can have all the speed you want, but you're going to be the last remaining Pokemon. And this is something we talked about coming into this game too, that Charizard, it has so many weaknesses on the opposing side, and that Landorus just proved why it was a difficult Pokemon to bring in here. But, you know, Hinata pinned all the hopes on on it, and just unfortunately it wasn't to be. Shadow Claw comes out from the speedier Groudon, but it doesn't get a KO, and Kyogre's going to go for that Water Spout, full HP in the rain, and get the knockout. Tomaa is going to be the winner of this set, 2-0.
Bang tidy in that one, being able to clean that up, saving the Kyogre for last is the way to do it. That is a crushing game 2, I think. A very confident set, honestly, from Tomaa, starting the day out 2-0. A lot of people looking at that team, you know, particularly the Europeans, seeing it, knowing they had to prep for it, and I just think Hinata maybe got caught a little bit, maybe worried about the Shedinja showing up. That's my thought about game 2, is if you see that Shedinja, it wasn't bought game 1, it could be a really nasty selection for game number 2. Being able to bring that, it just felt, honestly, that's why you get the Charizard, so you've got access to the max airstream. That was a very strange selection. I don't think either of us particularly enjoyed it as far as team choice goes, and I still think the Grimmsnarl might have been better.
That's the thing.